Look, the wedding ring. Turn out the lights.
Hi, and welcome to Cinema Studies, the show where we talk about the timeless films of the past and the history behind their creation. My name is Josh, and today I'm being joined by a new friend of mine that I met through YouTube, Danny K. What's going on, Danny? How are you?
What's up, Josh? Thanks for joining me. Hello to everyone watching. This should be a lot of fun. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Before we get started talking about it, go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us about your channel and all that stuff, kind of give everybody the rundown.
Right on. You can find me at Danny K Reviews on YouTube and Instagram. Basically, I just do movie reviews, new stuff that I'm watching. I like to do a lot of first-time watches where I watch classic movies for the first time, and movie rankings are kind of my favorite thing to do. And if you want to give me a subscribe, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, definitely go give him a subscribe. He's got a great channel. He loves movies, just like we do. So also like and subscribe this video. Give me a comment and hit the bell notification so you can see my other videos coming out. So the movie that we are going to talk about today is by the great Alfred Hitchcock, and that is Rear Window. And this is your favorite film of his, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen like 12 of his movies so far. I definitely want to watch more. He's got a lot more, but so far this is easily my favorite of his, and I don't see that changing. I mean, it could, who knows, but I don't know.
Yeah.
This is just top notch. If you're gonna introduce someone to Hitchcock, I would choose Rear Window.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think that this is I can't remember, but I think about 5 or 6 years ago, I bought a Hitchcock collection, and I want to say that this is the first movie of his that I watched. And I immediately fell in love with it. It's a great introduction to Hitchcock. If you haven't seen a Hitchcock movie, this is a great way to start. I think this is a better way to start even than like Psycho or something, because it is just it gives you all the best parts of Hitchcock in one movie, in my opinion.
It's the best movie to show to a Hitchcock newbie because it's got all the elements. It's got the unique storytelling, the humor, voyeurism, guilt, deals with relationships, sexuality. It's got it all.
It really does. We're gonna get into all that too. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the man himself, Alfred Hitchcock. I mean, he's one of the great filmmakers of all time, and in his time didn't really get a lot of credit, but has sort of afterwards, in retrospect, has gotten a lot more praise. The filmmakers of the 60s and 70s looking at his movies have been like, no, this guy was really great.
Hitchcock, I think, pioneered a whole type of film grammar. He taught us how to express things as clearly visually, I think, as they can be expressed. It's like good grammar. You either speak well or you speak badly. You either write clearly or you don't. And he does it. And when he's expressing an idea or a whole cinematic sequence, he puts the camera in exactly the right position. He has exactly the right shots.
Let's start at the beginning. He was born in England in 1899. In 1920, he started in the film industry, and his first job was writing the title cards for silent movies, like the little cards that you see for dialogue and stuff, because there was no sound. He would be drawing those cards. That was his first job. So through that, he got involved in the art department in the movies, and eventually kind of like stepped his way up until finally he got to direct something himself. His first like major movie that was a success is in 1927. It's called The Lodger. It's a movie about Jack the Ripper, and it's about this family that lives in a lodging home, and they think that their new tenant may be Jack the Ripper. It's about suspicion. And I just watched it this past week because I hadn't seen any of his silent movies, so I watched this one, and surprisingly held up pretty well for me. I thought it was really good.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome. I
yeah.
kind of been avoiding his silent movies just because, well, he's got so many other movies I can watch. But that's
Yeah.
good to know that you enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many silent movies you've seen. I haven't seen a lot myself.
I don't think I've seen any. I might have seen pieces of some, you know.
It's a very different style of filmmaking than what we're used to today. So you kind of have to adjust to it.
Right.
But once I was like maybe like 20, 30 minutes into the movie, I got sucked in, and I ended up really enjoying it. And I think that Hitchcock growing up in the silent era is a really important aspect of his style and his career.
Yep.
Because he's all about show don't tell. He's all about
True.
visual storytelling, like and you know, having to make a silent movie, you're forced to learn to do that way. You have to figure out how to convey things without using sound.
Yeah, people say he's the master of suspense, but he's also the master of visual storytelling.
And you know, Hitchcock wanted to do a very specific thing. Like, he had a specific style. He's always thinking about how am I going to twist this to make the audience scream or react or build that tension, you know. And he talks about in a lot of his interviews the difference between shock and suspense.
4 people are sitting around a table talking about baseball, whatever you like. 5 minutes of it, very dull. Suddenly, a bomb goes off, blows the people to smithereens. What do the audience have? 10 seconds of shock. Now take the same scene and tell the audience there is a bomb under that table and will go off in 5 minutes. Well, the whole emotion of the audience is totally different because you've given them that information that in 5 minutes' time, that bomb will go off. Now the conversation about baseball becomes very vital because they're saying to you, don't be ridiculous, stop talking about baseball, there's a bomb under there.
I wanted to show that always make the audience suffer as much as possible. Thank you, Hitchcock.
Yep. And he was smart like that. He knew the psychology of the audience and what was going to keep them engaged in his movies. So some interesting facts about how they made this movie. It's all in one location. It's out of Jimmy Stewart's apartment, and it's all set inside the soundstage on the backlot of the Paramount backlot. And at the time, it was the largest set that had ever been built.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
It's crazy the work they did to make this movie.
Yeah, they had never built anything that tall. To create like the 3 levels of the apartments and the courtyard and everything, they had to bust out the floor into the basement to create the courtyard.
So the first floor was actually in the basement.
Yeah.
And they had to have all kinds of special lighting to make it look like daytime.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to bring up, the lighting setup. They had 3 different lighting setups for the stage so that they could basically flip a switch and change the time of day, which is so much work. It makes it easier when you're on the set, but it's a lot more money and a lot more work to set that stuff up. But it's smart. That's how Hitchcock wanted to work. He wanted to have everything ready and efficient so he could just, move on.
Paid off.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So you ready to get into Rear Window?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Like it's a movie or a play you're about to watch.
Yeah,
curtains
it's like
rising.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a curtains rising on a stage. We see the camera push out into the courtyard, and it kind of just pans around, and we get the geography of this whole courtyard. We're seeing all the neighbors. We get Miss Torso dressing, one of the neighbors arguing, and another couple sleeping on their balcony, and then we pan back around into the apartment, and I think we see the thermostat. It's really hot outside. That's why everyone's windows is open, which is another like smart, just a little detail. It makes sense like why everybody's got their windows open, and you can see into everybody's apartment, because if it was cooler, you may not You may
Right.
not see all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah.
But you know, it kind of pans in, and then we see Jimmy Stewart, and he is sweating, and that he's got a broken leg. He's got his leg is in a cast, and then we kind of just keep moving through the apartment, which it had been a while since I'd seen this movie, and watching this part right here, I kind of blew my mind because I'd forgotten that he set so much stuff up just so in this opening shot. Because we move away from Jimmy Stewart, and then we see a broken camera, and then we see the picture of like this crazy car crash, and we're seeing all these little details on the desk, and it's telling us everything about this character. Like,
Right.
this is how he broke his leg. This is who he is. He's a photographer. Like, we're getting all of this stuff visually.
Blink and you'll miss it. You got to pay attention.
Yeah, it forces the audience to be engaged. They have to actually think about what they're looking at, because
Right.
it's telling you everything you need to know.
Jeffries?
Congratulations, Jeff.
For what?
We're getting rid of that cast.
Who said I was getting rid of it? Next Wednesday, I emerge from this plaster cocoon.
We're getting to know his character through this conversation, and at the same time, he's watching Miss Torso out the window.
Oh, yeah. Pervert.
Yeah, and this is where I want to bring up this effect that Hitchcock talked about in a couple of his interviews called the Kuleshov effect. I may have
Right.
probably mispronouncing it, but
Yeah.
he talks about it in a few of his interviews, and it's basically just the act of storytelling through multiple images. As an
Right.
example, there's some good ones of just still images of Hitchcock, and we see Hitchcock looking at something, and then we see a wife and her child, and then we see Hitchcock smiling, and we're like, oh, it's a nice old man.
He's a sweet guy.
Yeah, and it's not anything. We're just inferring that basically from what we're seeing.
You just
But-
instantly know it somehow.
Right. But you can take the exact same images with him looking at something, and then we see like a girl in a bathing suit laying out, and then him smiling, and we're like, oh, he's a dirty old man. He's a pervert. And it's the exact same images, but just changing
Right.
the image in the middle of what he's looking at, and it completely changes the context. And that's
It's actually
what
genius.
it really is.
It's done through so many movies. We're used to it. We don't even think about it.
It's not something you think about it, but it's that is what Hitchcock does over and over again, and especially in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to do in this movie.
This movie is all that, because it is basically Jimmy Stewart just observing people over and over. We see him looking out the window, we see what he's looking at, and then we get his reaction shot.
And I also want to point out that throughout most of this movie, if not all of it, his mood often reflects the mood of the other characters that he's watching. So like
That's
if
a really-
someone's happy or sad or whatever, you'll notice that that's kind of how he's feeling at the same time. Happens a lot with this movie.
That's a really good point. That's a really
Yeah.
good point. Yeah. It's interesting. As we go through it, we'll kind of talk about it more. But a lot of his neighbors kind of reflect his own internal thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Like it's another way of telling you what Jeffries is feeling without saying.
New York State sentence for a peeping Tom is 6 months in the workhouse.
Hello, Scott.
They got no windows in the workhouse. You know, in the old days, they used to put your eyes out with a red-hot poker.
The dialogue in this movie, of course, is fantastic, especially with James Stewart and the nurse. I love their back and forth.
Oh,
Every
because
time
they're both so kind of crotchety
Yeah.
that
And
they just
witty.
and witty. They both just rib each other constantly.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. We become a race of peeping Toms. What people ought to do is get outside their own house and look in for a change.
You know, we've already kind of said it, but this movie is all about voyeurism. It's about sitting and watching other people, and
Right.
it's a little bit uncomfortable in certain times. It's like, and it's speaking to filmmaking itself, because what are we doing when we're watching a movie? We're looking
Yeah.
into people's private lives.
Right. It feels like
which-
she's talking to us.
Yes, it really is. Like, you know, what does that say about us as a society that we like to sit and watch? Like the TV is almost a window itself. We're sitting and watching these people's private lives.
Right.
And this is a sort of a unique movie because we're sitting and watching a guy sitting and watching other people.
That's good.
So
That's
it's almost
good.
a commentary on, you know, filmmaking itself. And so we see Stella giving him a back rub. They're talking about how he doesn't want to get married.
No, she's just not the girl for me.
Yeah, she's only perfect.
She's too perfect. She's too talented. She's too beautiful. She's too sophisticated. She's too everything but what I want.
So they're having this discussion about, you know, how he doesn't want to get married. His girlfriend is too perfect, even though we find out it's Grace freaking Kelly. I mean, he's nuts. But as we look at the relationship between them, we're going to see the relationships of all of his neighbors sort of reflect that as well. And they sort of show all the different stages of relationships.
Oh, yeah.
We fade into the evening. Stuart is asleep again in his chair. We see a shadow fall over his face, and then we get that beautiful, marvelous close-up of Grace Kelly.
How's your leg?
And he's like, it hurts a little in your stomach, empty as a football.
Do you love life?
Not too active.
Anything else bothering you?
Mm-hmm. Who are you?
Yeah. Another good quote.
Yeah. He's lovable because he's Jimmy Stewart. If this was somebody else saying this stuff,
Yeah.
he would probably just be a dick. You know?
Yeah.
You
You get the feeling that that's kind of how he is in real life.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah. And there's like, I like him for the most part, but there's moments in the movie where I'm like, come on, dude. Like, you're being an asshole. Like, get over yourself, you know? He's kind of a crotchety old man.
Yeah.
Isn't it time you came home? You could pick your assignment.
Well, I wish there was one I wanted.
Make the one you want.
You mean leave the magazine?
Yes.
For what?
For yourself and me.
And she's, you know, really trying to convince him to settle down and stop traveling. But he likes it, you know, he loves the adventure of it. And it's another reason that reinforces why he's sitting and watching these people, because that's kind of his job. He's always looking through a lens at other people's lives. He's looking out the window once again, and we see Miss Lonely Hearts. We see she's all dressed up. She's like setting her table. She's lighting candles. Looks like she's about to have a nice dinner. And then she walks to the door to let somebody in. She's talking to somebody that we can't see. And then she like beckons them inside. But we don't see anybody.
Yeah.
And she sits down there. She's having this fake conversation at the table. And after a minute, she kind of just breaks down and starts crying.
It's a heartbreaking scene, and to me, it's showing us what will happen to Jimmy if he doesn't get his crap together and be with the girl that he should be with. He'll become her.
We see the piano player starting to play that song that we end up hearing several times throughout the movie. Sort of becomes Liza's theme song.
Where's that wonderful music coming from?
And she's like, well, it's enchanting. It's almost as if they were writing it especially for us.
No wonder he's having so much trouble with it.
And then we fade into later in the evening, and they're having this like disagreement. You know, she's like, why can't you get a job in the city? Stop traveling. You know, I want you to be with me. It's time to settle down. And he's like, you know, no, like that's not what I'm gonna do.
I guess I'm not the girl I thought I was.
No, there's nothing wrong with you, Lisa. You've got this town in the palm of your hand.
Not quite, it seems.
You kind of feel like maybe they're about to break up. And she says goodbye, and he's like, well, why can't we just keep things status quo? Which is such a, again, just like a dick thing to say. Like,
Yeah.
he's just like, when am I going to see you again? And she's like,
Not for a long time.
At least,
Not until tomorrow night.
it's kind of sad because you see, I have the feeling that if we got to look through her window when she goes home, she is sort of like Miss Lonely Heart. Like she, you know, as she's kind of been, especially those females, that the neighbors that we see, Miss Torso, Miss Lonely Hearts, they like she's that lady as well. Like she's been there and she's ready to settle down, and he's just not having it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Didn't think of it like that. And yeah, and we know as an audience that if he doesn't accept her, eventually she's just gonna get out of his life.
Yeah.
And find someone new.
You know, you can tell he's sort of thinking about it and feeling bad about it, and then he's looking out the window again, and then we hear a scream, and we hear some shattering glass. And then we kind of get a series of like short scenes that fade in and out here. We see the couple that's sleeping on the balcony scramble through their window as it starts to rain. Then we see the man of the older couple leave his apartment with a raincoat and a big suitcase. And Jeffries is watching him, and he looks at his watch, and we see it's like 1:55 in the morning.
So he's like, what the hell is this guy doing?
Yeah, he's suspicious. And then we fade out, and now it's 2:35 in the morning. And we see Mr. Thorwald returning.
So he leaves the house at least a few times, twice, and comes back with a suitcase in the middle of the night.
Yeah. And what we find out is that, you know, his wife has been bedridden, and she's got something wrong with her, like
some kind of sickness.
I don't think I brought it up earlier, but we'd seen them sort of having disagreements as well. Like he had brought her like breakfast or something with a flower, and she had just kind of thrown the flower on the ground, and we could tell that it was a very unhappy marriage.
Oh, yeah.
So
there's your motive.
So you get a little bit of motive there. Yeah.
I think the rain would have cooled things off. All it did was make the heat wet.
And yeah, he's talking about he's like, well, I don't know why the salesman would be leaving, coming back and forth in the middle of the night.
Right. And at first she thinks she's not believing him.
Yeah. just like everybody. He was kind of like, you know, you're just being too nosy, you know, mind your own business.
Yeah.
And we see the dog sniffing around the flower beds.
And that's when Thorwald eyes the dog.
Yes.
He's looking at the dog like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're like, wait a minute.
Oh yeah, we see like Thorwald like wiping down the inside of his suitcase inside his apartment, and all these like weird cleaning up all these like weird little things. And Jeffries asked Stella to hand him the binoculars. So now we're really looking into people's.
Jeff's watching this guy like a hawk now.
And Jeffries gets his camera, and we get that gigantic lens on his camera, and he's looking at Thorwald. Let me ask you, when you're watching this for the first time, are you pretty sure that you think that he actually killed her, or is there any point where you're like, maybe this guy's just being too nosy and reading too much into it, just like
I kind of thought he was being too nosy, honestly. I thought the fact that I assume anyone watching this video has probably seen the movie.
I hope so.
I think it would be too obvious to be like, oh yeah, he killed his wife. So I figured there'd be some other explanation, and then Jeffrey would discover that later his imagination got the best of him. So that was kind of my first thoughts. What about you?
For sure, I think I felt the same way. I was like, it can't be this simple. Like, there's got to be a twist. He's like, he didn't just witness all this stuff, and it's a little too obvious. And that's sort of what everyone's telling him at the same time too. It's like, you're just being too nosy. Like, everybody has knives and saws and ropes and stuff. Like, and you're just reading too much into it.
Why would a man leave his apartment 3 times on a rainy night with a suitcase and come back 3 times?
That's the way his wife welcomes him home.
No.
Even while they're kissing, his eyes are like looking out the window. He's more interested in what's
Oh,
happening
yeah.
Out the window than he is with Grace freaking Kelly right in front of him. Like, come on, bro.
Who cares? Someone got murdered.
Yeah, for real. Eventually she kind of gives up, and then Jeffrey says,
Just how would you start to cut up a human body?
Jeff, I'll be honest with you. You're beginning to scare me a little.
and Jeffries pulls out his binoculars, and Liza is just like getting mad.
Right.
Because he just doesn't care about her at all right now. He's too preoccupied. And he says,
I've seen bickering and family quarrels and mysterious trips at night, and knives and saws and ropes, and now since last evening, not a sign of the wife. All right, now you tell me where she is.
And she's just like, I don't know. Lots of men have knives and saws and ropes, and lots of men don't speak to their wives all day.
Lots of wives nag and men hate them and trouble starts, but very, very few of them end up in murder, if that's what you're thinking.
It's pretty hard for you to keep away from that word, isn't it?
And then suddenly Eliza is looking out the window, and Jeffries grabs his binoculars, and we see Thorwald in his wife's room, and the mattress is rolled up behind him, and a huge trunk in front of him tied up with ropes.
Let's start from the beginning again, Jeff. Tell me everything you saw.
Now she's suspicious as well. She's in. And I also I don't know if you feel this way, but at first she is definitely suspicious, but I think it's also her way of just getting him to pay attention to her too. She feels like she's in on it now. So she's like, maybe, I don't know if you feel this way, but maybe it's an incentive for her to get him to finally.
I never really thought about it like that, but that does make sense. So I think it's a combination. She's interested about the murder, and she wants to get his attention, if that means doing what he wants to do.
Yeah, I think so too. I think she genuinely does think that something's going on, but it's also like, maybe if I get invested in this, then he will care about me.
Yeah, and it shows us that she's not just some lady that sits around. She can go out there and do stuff. Yeah, potentially dangerous stuff.
I think that it's also her way of proving to him that she's not afraid of getting her hands dirty a little bit, and we definitely see that more as it goes on.
Yep.
Jeffries is on the phone trying to get one of his old friend detectives to come by and take a look at the situation.
Well, there's probably nothing important at all. It's just a little neighborhood murder, that's all.
And we go to later on, and his detective friend shows up now.
And he's skeptical.
I think I made all this up.
No, I think you saw something. There's probably a very simple explanation for it.
So he pretty much discounts everything that Jeffrey says right away. He says it, but he says, like, okay, you're my friend, I'll do a little digging. We get another fade out. The detective is back. He gives them some information about the Thorwald family. He says, the wife left the apartment at 6 a.m. and was put on a train, and she left the country.
What do you need before you can search? Tell me now, what do you need? Bloody footsteps leading up to the door?
One thing I don't need is heckling. You call me and ask for help.
And then the detective pulls out a postcard that he got from the mailbox that shows that Mrs. Thorwald sent it to him when she arrived out in the country. We go to later in the evening. Jeffries is looking out the window. We see Miss Lonelyheart. She seems to be getting ready for a date. She pours a drink, and then she leaves her apartment, and Liza's like,
a woman has a favorite handbag. It always hangs on her bedpost where she can get at it easily. And then all of a sudden she goes away on a trip and leaves it behind. Why?
Suddenly Jeffries is like really interested in Liza. He's like, oh, she's talking my language now.
What else have you got on this man, Thorwald?
Well, enough to scare me you wouldn't show up in time and we'd lose him.
Think he's getting out of here?
But he's got everything he owns laid out over there in the bedroom waiting to be packed.
And for a minute we think that maybe he actually is starting to, he found something, like maybe he believes Jeffries now.
Right.
Because he's being really quiet, and then he kind of pulls the rug out from under him, and he's like,
Lars Thorwald is no more a murderer than I am.
he explained that he checked the train station, and Lars bought a ticket, and his wife was seen getting on the train, and he tracked down the trunk, and inside was just his wife's clothes, and it was bound by rope because the lock was broken. The detective leaves, and even Jeffries is like, maybe, this isn't what I thought it was after all. And we see Miss Lonely Heart come back.
Look.
With a man. She brings a man back to her apartment, and she starts to lower the blinds. And then all of a sudden the man kind of is like all
advances
over
on her.
Yeah, very, very aggressive. She slaps him and kicks him right out of the apartment, and then she kind of falls on the couch crying, and it's just, again, it's really sad. After Jeffrey sees that really private exchange with Miss Lonely Hearts, he's like,
I wonder if it's ethical to watch a man with binoculars and a long focus lens. Do you suppose it's ethical even if you prove that he didn't commit a crime?
yeah. And this is where, they both kind of seem like they've kind of given up. They're like, well, I guess we got it wrong. And then this is where we get the scene with the dog.
It's dead. It's been strangled. The neck is broken.
Everything in this movie, the camera is always from Jeffrey's point of view. Except right here. Alfred Hitchcock, he breaks this rule at this moment. He does that to show like the shock and the importance of this moment.
Which one of you did it? Which one of you killed my dog? You don't know the meaning of the word neighbor.
And she cries and she goes back into her apartment. It's a turning point for the movie.
Look, in the whole courtyard, only one person didn't come to the window.
All the neighbors come to look except for Thorwald, and he's sitting there because you see the cigarette burning. So he's just like, yeah, I just killed that dog. He's smoking a cigarette. He's not going out to look because he knows what he just did.
And this is where we get to the Stella, Liza, and Jeffries are all at the window, and Lars is scrubbing down the bathroom.
Must have splattered a lot.
Suddenly, Jeffries realizes something, that the flowers in the garden are shorter, and it starts to make him think that maybe there's a reason why he killed the dog. Maybe something's buried there.
Let's wait till it gets a little darker, and I'll go over there and dig them up.
You'll go. You won't dig anything up and get your neck broken.
Then he goes over to the desk and he writes on a sheet of paper.
Yeah, and he writes, "What have you done with her?"
He's really laying his cards on the table now. He wants him to know that somebody knows, and he wants to see how he's going to react to it. So we see Liza go over there and slide the envelope under the door, and
he sees it right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
The paper.
Yeah.
So this is a tense moment.
Yeah, this is where the tension really starts, because there's some stakes now.
You did it, Thorwald. You did it.
Wasn't that close?
She comes back to Jeffrey's apartment all excited and like, oh.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey looks at her and like smiles, like he's realizing this woman, she's cool. And she gets all excited when she's doing adventuring stuff. And he's seeing her differently now. And he's like, yeah, I think I could be with this woman.
That's a good point. Suddenly he's like, maybe I'm wrong about her. Maybe she's willing to do a little bit, get her hands dirty a little bit, like we said.
Mind if I use that portable key? Oh.
Go ahead, as long as you tell me what you're looking at.
And looks out to see Miss Lonely Hearts pouring a big handful of pills as well.
Yeah. You're thinking, is she gonna kill herself or what?
While all this is happening, he looks up Thorwald's name in the phone book and then calls him.
Did you get my note? Well, did you get it, Thorwald?
Who are you?
And he tells him to go meet him at the hotel, and we'll settle the estate of your late wife.
Right.
So we're really getting deep now.
Come on, Stella, let's go.
One of you keep an eye on this window. If I see him coming back, I'll signal with a flashbulb.
And we see them dig up the garden, and they don't find anything. Liza decides to go climb up into the apartment and take a look around. And Jeffries is like losing his mind because he's like, no, he didn't want her to do this because it's too dangerous. And he's like, get out of there, come on, get out of there. And
she's in danger now.
yeah, she's like in serious danger, and we don't know how long Thorwald's gonna be gone. It's not gonna be long because he's gonna go there and nobody's gonna be there. So he's gonna come right back. And we see Liza is looking around in Thorwald's apartment, and she finds Mrs. Thorwald's handbag. We see Stella looks down and sees Mrs. Lonelyheart's about to take the pills. So we've got two separate storylines going on here, which really like ramps up the tension as well.
Yeah.
Like we're
two women that could die. Yeah.
Oh, call the police.
Give me the police.
But as he's calling the police, we see that Miss Lonelyheart stops. And what makes her stop is the music.
The music stopped her.
Suddenly, we see Thorwald walking back to his apartment, and he gets to the door just as Lisa is about to leave. And
we're on the edge of our seats.
Yeah, and we're like biting all our fingernails off at this point. And she has to run and hide because he comes into the apartment. And then the police answer the phone.
Precinct 6, Sergeant Allgood. Hello. Look, a man is assaulting a woman at 125 West 9th Street, second floor, at the rear.
So now we got the police on their way. And Thorwald walks into the bedroom. He sees that the handbag has been opened. He's looking around. He catches Liza. And he's being really rough with her too. He like grabs her and like throws her down. And like, Jeffries is like really going crazy
because he can't do shit. He's like,
he's just like helpless. He's like,
why did I do this?
yeah. He's like really regretting it now. He's afraid he's gonna get her killed. And the police show up, and he flips the lights back on, like just in the nick of time. And all of this is visual too. Like we don't actually really hear any of this dialogue. We're just watching from across the courtyard all of this stuff happening.
Which is cool. We like imagine what they might be saying.
Exactly. You know, we know what they're saying, but we're not hearing any of it. We're just watching it.
Right. Yeah.
Look, the wedding ring.
To me, that's one of the most iconic movie moments. Like I remember watching pieces of this movie when my dad watched it, and I was a kid and I didn't care. But I saw this one scene, and even me as a kid was like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah.
He just noticed this is gonna get bad, and then Jeff freaks out. Get the lights! Get the lights!
And the police take Liza out of the apartment. And Stella leaves to try and go bail out Liza.
Okay. So now Jeff is by himself.
Now Jeff is by himself. He also calls his buddy Doyle.
All right, what is it now?
Doyle, I've got something really big for you. Listen to me. Lisa's in jail. She got arrested.
But he's also telling him what happened, and he's like, she got the wedding ring. There's something going on. So now Doyle, it's like he's looking into it again. Jeffries puts the phone down, and he's looking up, and he sees that Thorwald's apartment is dark now.
Hello, Tom. I think Thorwald's left. I don't.
He hears the click, and then he's like scrambling around his apartment. He's like, "Do I get out of the chair?" He's stuck in his chair. He's a sitting duck. There's nothing, really nothing he can do.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a gun or anything. So he grabs his camera with his flash bulbs, and then he kind of like rolls back into the corner as far away from the door as he can get. And then we see the door slowly open.
What do you want from me? Your friend, the girl, could have turned me in. Why didn't she?
Jeff ain't answering him.
No, he's kind of terrified with fear.
You kind of feel a little bad for Thorwald. And what Hitchcock is known for is making his villains very human and almost sympathetic, normal, and they're just normal guys. And you can see maybe there is some good in him. Maybe he had not a good reason for killing her, but maybe she pushed him to do it, you know? Who knows? But you almost want to be like, well, just answer the guy.
Yeah,
You're screwing with him.
You're right, and it's Hitchcock does this a lot, but a lot of his movies are showing like something extraordinary happening in like a really ordinary situation. But yeah, I mean, this is a really tense scene. Like this whole like last part of the movie is super tense, and it just builds and escalates really quickly. And Thorwald steps forward, and then Jeffries flashes him with the flashbang. What do you think about this tactic? Do you think this makes sense?
It's kind of cheesy to me because he's like taking his sweet ass time walking up, and then he gets.
Yeah.
It's like a video game boss fight.
Right.
But it makes it charming to me. I like it. It works for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I like it, and it's cool because it's his profession. It's like it's what he has laying around, and it's like him using what he has. So it's smart, especially since they're in the dark. It would blind you for a minute.
Oh yeah.
Especially like, I think they overuse it because I think he flashes him like 4 times.
Yeah.
So like the first couple of times I'm like, okay, I buy it, and then like the third and fourth time I'm like. But finally, Thorwald gets over to him and he starts like strangling him. I mean,
and you're like, oh shit.
He's like really trying to kill him. He like throws him out the window, and Jeffries is hanging by his fingers on the edge of the window. And at the same time, we see the police and Liza show back up, but we see him across the courtyard over at Thorwald's apartment. Just as like he's about to lose his grip, we see the police burst into his apartment and they grab Thorwald. So then we see Jeffries fall into the courtyard.
Right. And I like that shot with him falling.
It's a really good shot. Liza and Doyle run up. Jeffries is okay.
You got enough for a search warrant now?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Lieutenant Doyle.
Yeah?
He okay?
He's alive.
Thorwald's ready to take us on a tour of the East River.
We're pretty much wrapping up now. We fade out. The first shot is the thermometer, and we see now it's 72 degrees. Everybody's happier now. It's not as hot. The camera pans over. We see the piano player and Miss Lonely Hearts is in the apartment with him. We saw the music sort of save her, and now seems like they're gonna get together. We see Jeffries in his wheelchair. Now he's got a cast on both of his legs.
That's great.
Then we see Eliza laying out next to him, and she's reading a book called Beyond the High Himalayas, which is like, oh, maybe she is gonna go on him with some adventures. And she looks over and sees him asleep. Then she puts that book down and she picks up her Bizarre magazine.
Her Glamour magazine or whatever.
And that's the end of the movie. We've reached the end of Rear Window.
Yeah, and also she's wearing different clothes. Like she normally wears pretty dress or whatever, but now she's wearing like pants or more outside type clothes. Like she's ready to get out there.
That's a good point.
So what do you think about her putting the book down and then grabbing her magazine when she sees that he's sleeping?
I think it's just a funny little thing. It's just like it's showing she is willing to be interested in that stuff for him, but it's not for her. She still loves her glamour and her nice things and all that stuff. But she loves him enough that she will she's still willing to do that for him.
Yeah, because to me it kind of tells me that relationships are about compromise, where she can do what he wants to do, but at the end of the day it's okay to like what you like too. You don't just need to completely change for this person. It's okay to be into fashion and beauty and all that crap. You can have the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
What I get out of it.
No, you put that better than I did. That's perfect. What are your final thoughts on the film?
Yeah, man. Like I was saying earlier, I think it's his best movie. Of course, so far I've only seen like 12. I think it has the best story, the most interesting story, the best dialogue. It's so just witty and funny. Everything with it worked for me. I think it was extremely brilliantly crafted, especially when you watch like documentaries, interviews, people smarter than I am talk about this movie, break down this movie. You really realize that Hitchcock is a genius. And to prove it, I would show people Rear Window. Is there a movie of his that might be better? I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of doubt it. And yeah, I think Rear Window is probably his peak, his best movie. And yeah,
Yes. He's got so many classics, and yeah, I tend to agree. This is definitely one of his best. There's other like great ones that, a lot of his like really popular best movies all came around this time too, like into the
okay.
late 50s, and
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yep.
Rear Window, Vertigo, Psycho, all these movies were
Popular ones. Yeah.
within within like a 6-7 year window. Like they all came out right there, and it's a great run of movies. But like we kind of said at the beginning, this to me is the ultimate Hitchcock movie.
Yeah.
In terms of form, in terms of how clever it is, in terms of just like the basic simple craft of what
Yes.
he does as a storyteller.
Makes it look easy. Yeah.
I mean, the effect that we talked about earlier, the shot, POV, reaction shot. That's all this is. It's just editing him looking at something, us seeing what he's looking at, and then his reaction to it over and over and over again. But it creates just such a fun, entertaining film that it is all contained in this little apartment. It's like, how do you create so much drama and so much humor and so much tension in this little contained area? Well, we'll wrap it up here. Thanks so much, Danny. Thanks you so much for everybody for watching. If you enjoyed this discussion, please like and subscribe, hit the bell notification, and leave me a comment. What's your favorite Hitchcock movie? How do you feel about Rear Window? Let's have a discussion. And definitely go check out Danny's channel as well. If you want to plug it one more time, go ahead, Danny.
Yep, Danny K Reviews. Go check out my channel. If you like what you see, give it a sub. I very much appreciate it. Thank you, Josh, for having me. This was awesome. Invite me anytime because I'm flexible and I love movies.
Yeah, I just love talking about movies. That's the whole reason I made this. I want to be able to talk about somebody that shares similar passions. So I'm glad we finally did this. All right, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.